Breaking news today. Saddened by the bullshit gift of Putin as God, the troops are angry. After a year of Vladimir Putin ordering the slaughter of innocent Ukrainians and the sacrifice of hundreds of thousands of Russian citizens in his name, the Kremlin has apparently dropped a not-so-subtle hint on the country's armed forces that they are expected to worship Putin. Russian conscripts from the Perm region who were deployed to a death trap in Ukraine reported being thrilled to receive an Easter care package from Putin's political party, until they discovered the package also contained a quasi-religious icon depicting Putin's face. Our first thoughts upon opening the package were, they sent us something, they haven't forgotten about us. The Easter holiday is coming soon. But as it turns out, the holiday has nothing to do with it. A soldier was quoted in the local publication Perm 36.6 as saying, "No matter how much a patriot of my homeland I may be, this is already complete bullshit." The photos of the gift feature Putin in a parody of a religious icon, a small painting usually depicting saints. If the soldiers had any doubt about the item's intended use, a note was scribbled on the box in large, bold red ink reading, "For prayers." Last month, enlistees said they were given holy protection candles that claimed to deflect bullets from their direction by Putin's ruling party, United Russia. It also comes as reports of disgruntled soldiers and their families complaining to Putin directly about a botched war effort increase. Several families of men drafted from Tatarstan's Autonomous Republic made an appeal to Putin in a video released on Tuesday. They claimed that the men's documents and phones were confiscated by military leaders before they were sent on a suicide mission from which they would not return. Reluctant soldiers were reportedly told by their commanders that it was okay to die because Putin would send replacements, according to a family member. Vladimir Kara-Murza, a journalist and activist who has been a vocal critic of the Kremlin for decades, was found guilty of treason and given a 25-year prison sentence in what he claims was a show trial, reminiscent of the 1930s. The 41-year-old, who is a dual citizen of Russia and the United Kingdom, was arrested in April 2022 on charges of insulting the Russian armed forces. However, treason and joining a criminal organization were added to the original list of charges. Kara-Murza has been an outspoken critic of Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, for many years. The Institute of Modern Russia and the Open Russia Foundation are just two of the anti-regime parties and think tanks he's been involved with. He played a pivotal role in getting the Magnitsky Act passed, which allowed the United States to seize the overseas assets of Russian oligarchs. The law is named after Sergei Magnitsky, a tax attorney who uncovered a corruption scheme in 2007 that resulted in the theft of $230 million (£185 million) from Russian taxpayers by the Kremlin. Magnitsky was taken to a Moscow pre-trial detention center, where he was tortured and died. Kara-Murza has long pushed for international sanctions against Putin's inner circle in Russia, making him a major target for the Kremlin. His close friendship with Boris Nemtsov, the opposition leader murdered in a Moscow street in 2015, didn't help his standing in the Kremlin, either. Continuing to accuse Putin of ordering Nemtsov's murder would have gotten him in even more trouble with the law. Kara-Murza's kidney failure, which occurred 3 months after Nemtsov's death, is widely believed to have been the result of poisoning. Kara-Murza experienced similar symptoms 2 years later, suggesting she had been poisoned again. Even though Bellingcat found no direct evidence linking Kara-Murza to the Kremlin, they did discover that agents from the Federal Security Service had been tailing her in the years leading up to both poisonings. Kara-Murza claimed in her closing statement that the Putinist system had brought back 1930s-style show trials. "Unbeknownst to me, my trial has exceeded the trials of Soviet dissidents in the 1960s and 1970s in its secrecy and disregard for legal norms. Not to mention the prosecution's call for a severe sentence and the invocation of enemies of the state rhetoric. We've gone back even further than the 70s to the 30s on this one. For me, a historian, this is a time for introspection." Opposition leaders and anti-Putin activists have a long history of being killed or persecuted. This includes not only the murder of Boris Nemtsov, but also the murder of Alexander Litvinenko in 2006, and most recently, the rumored poisoning of Alexei Navalny. Since he was detained upon his return to Russia from Germany in January 2021, where he had been recovering from a second poisoning attempt in the middle of 2020, Navalny has been incarcerated. Putin has given numerous hints that he wants to stay in power indefinitely, including the elimination of political opponents and the introduction of constitutional changes in 2020 that will effectively allow him to do so until 2036. Putin has turned Russia into a textbook, spin dictatorship, over the course of 3 decades. By controlling the Russian media and engaging in virtual politics, in which fictional parties are created in an effort to divide opposition to Putin's regime, the Kremlin routinely manipulates the political process to ensure it retains power. Kara-Murza is just the most recent victim of Putin's regime, which has a long history of using manipulation and intimidation to silence political opponents. Establishment of a stronger police state. The opposition leaders Kara-Murza and Navalny are not the only ones who have been targeted. Putin has been so harsh that in March of 2022, children laying flowers outside the Ukrainian embassy in Moscow were arrested. Masha Moskalova, now 13 years old, was sent to an orphanage after her school principal reported her for drawing an anti-war picture. Her dad, Alexei Moskalyov, got 2 years in prison because of a picture his daughter drew. Spreading false information about the Russian military is punishable by 15 years in prison, according to new legislation passed by the Russian parliament in early March 2022. There are reports that citizens are being encouraged to spy on and accuse each other, bringing back the atmosphere of the Stalin era. It is admirable that anyone is willing to protest under these conditions. Ukrainian authors Taras Shevchenko and Lesia Ukrainka had flowers left at their statues in cities all over Russia. It's not a lot, but it's better than nothing. While polls show that a majority of Russians support the conflict, the reality is more complicated. Meanwhile, the Russia correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, Evan Gershkovich, was arrested and accused of espionage in late March. The last time the Kremlin detained a foreign journalist was in 1986. In his closing court statement, Kara-Murza predicted, "The day will come when the darkness over our country will dissipate. The Kremlin runs the risk of putting the Russian people in a position where they have nothing to lose if they continue to create martyrs and corner the populace."